So for the SEC 205 final project that I did, my mini lesson that I created is going to be on the types of economies of the world. I had previously done a mini lesson similar to this in my second field placement when I was at Ashley High School because I was in a civics and economics class. And the class was really fun. My teacher was Mr. Nagel, and I enjoyed the class. He was very helpful with giving me lessons to teach. In the class, we talked a lot about the election, so that was interesting just because I got to hear about it from them and that age group, which will be like the next age group to vote in the next election. So it was interesting to see what they thought about it. But for this lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach the kids about the types of economies of the world. The three main types of economies will be traditional, command, and free market, free enterprise. So we'll go through this PowerPoint as if the students are here learning, and then at the end of the assignment, at the end of the PowerPoint, I have an assignment where what they'll do is there will be a Venn diagram that the students will draw on a sheet of paper, and then they'll have 3 circles for each of the economies, and they'll place the numbers of like the said detail of each economy, and they'll place it in the Venn diagram, and that'll like show that they learned at least from the lesson. So this is the anticipatory set. The PowerPoint will be like the guided practice that I'll give with them. The independent practice will be them working on the diagram on their own, and then we'll bring it back together, and I'll go over it with the students, and that'll be how the lesson will go today. So in the instructions, it said to go between a student in this class and a teacher for the high school students. So right now I'm going to like transition back to being a teacher for those students, and we're going to start the lesson, and we'll do that now. Good morning, class. You guys know me, I'm Mr. Berger. So I'll be teaching you this lesson that I came up with today. It'll be about the types of economies. And so I know that Mr. Nagel's taught you several things about the types of economies in the world, but we're going to get into a little bit more detail, and I just want you to learn and understand about them. There will be an assignment at the end of this that we'll get to, and don't worry about the assignment when we get to it because we will go over it at the end, but I want to see you guys try and give effort. And with that, we'll start with the notes. All right, so the first type of economy is the traditional economy. The traditional economy is one in which each new generation retains the economic position of its parents or grandparents and relies on the historic success of social customs. So that basically means it relies on traditional economy. I hope that all makes sense. It's not super complicated. The second bullet point, tradition decides what an individual does for the living. So that's how the that's how the economy works. If your family in the traditional economy has always been farmers, then they'll continue to probably be farmers. If they were maybe priests or they were religious leaders, then that family will probably continue to be religious leaders just because that's the way their traditions always worked. So one advantage of these is that the traditions and customs are preserved, and the societies are very close-knit. They're very close together, close-knit, that's what that means. It just shows that they're very close. There's not a lot of difference between the people, and they all are one people together. Instead of some people thinking that they're this race and they're this race, they're all one. Excuse me. So that's an advantage. A disadvantage is that there's not much access to other parts of the world because they're a close-knit society that just like stays to themselves. So they don't have access to Western ideas, technology, or medicine. There's not a lot of new stuff for them. Now they do come into contact with people, but sometimes they're very remote. Some of these groups include the Amish that are in even North America, in the U.S. So they have this small colony, maybe not a colony, but the area where they live. I mean, they're considered a traditional economy. Ancient tribes, such as Native American tribes, are either in South America or the Aborigines in Australia. Those are all considered traditional economies. They don't have much access outside of their own economy and their own lifestyle. They stick to what they know. All right, the second type of economy is a free market economy. And in a free market economy, one second, I'm gonna just adjust the viewing for this. All right, sorry about that. I'm just trying to work with the projector. The beam is very high and it's making it hard to see on the PowerPoint, but hopefully it's not too much of a problem. So, as I was saying, for the free market economy, it's based on consumers and buying and how they purchase their goods. It has to do with supply and demand, and product popularity generates what the businesses produce. That's supply and demand. So, in the free market economy, working is incentivized, and it's like if you work longer, if you try harder, you'll make more money, and that's the incentive to have more money, to spend more money, and that's one of the main advantages, is that you can get as much money as you work for if you deserve it. That's just how the free market economy works. Another advantage is that the government is not too much involved in it, which a lot of people do like. There's just a lot of people sometimes who wish that government was not as involved with the government. People don't like regulations and taxes and everything. And one of the main things that we've talked about in this election has been like trade agreements, or NAFTA or TPP, that was talked about, that are possibly hurting the U.S. economy. And so some people don't like that, but that's also that's why it's a good thing that we're in a free market economy, because it's not like a command economy, which we'll talk about next, where the government just controls everything and you don't have a say. So one of the disadvantages for a free market economy is that the elite class will hold a large population, or a large percentage of the wealth of the population. And some people don't think it's that much. Some people don't think that that's fair. They don't like that. I mean, in America, I think the top 1% holds 25% of the wealth. And it's just, that's just how it goes. When there's people like Bill Gates who are worth $70 billion or other insane amounts, but that's what they worked for and they earned it, so that's how it goes. Some people don't like that because then it leads the poorer classes to deal with poverty, which is another problem for another time. So, the next slide. So it was command economy. So in command economies, the government controls all the economic activity. And there's one main example of the command economy is communism. Socialism can also be a form of a command economy, but there are some differences. So communism, obviously, there's more control than socialism. In a command economy, there's basically no flexibility in the market, and the economy reacts slower to changes in consumer patterns because the government controls what they buy. So even if people were to stop buying something, the government might not change that for a while because the government does what it wants. One of the advantages of a command economy is that it's actually usually has a healthy supply of its own resources and generally rewards its own people with affordable prices. For the most part, they try to be fair, and like everything is equal, and that's one of the main things. So there's usually no shortage of jobs or no class system in a command economy, which is another thing that people like. That way there's no elite aristocracy and there's no poor people. Everybody's the same. A disadvantage is that the state determines the jobs and salary. You don't have a say. You can try and get an education, but the government might say, you're going to go work on the farm, you're going to go work in the factory, you're going to teach in a school. and you don't have a say. There's no freedom for consumers or producers. You make what you make, or the government tells you what you make, how much you earn, and then they also tell you what you can and can't buy. And so command economies are found in such countries as North Korea,